You know what I mean when I say runny? When
Oh
I say
yeah,
runny with the
the
egg?
yeah. I
Okay,
think so.
just making
I
sure.
think we're
See, so
like
there you are, scrambled egg boy. I see you.
I'm
You
so.
don't know.
Are you confusing? It's like how they used to do it when we were in England.
Yeah, it just means they're letting the yellow yolk
They
not
run a little bit.
harden,
Okay, I didn't know
so
if
it
it
can
was a
bleed a bit.
euphemism for something that like I just didn't know. Like, okay, cool. You're simply just talking about eggs.
I mean, it could be a euphemism, but that's for a different podcast. So you can
That's
continue
for
with
the
your
After Hours
synopsis.
podcast. What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to Post Finale. I'm your host, Ankit Madhira. I'm an actor and a musician who hasn't seen a lot of films, so to make my friends happy and potentially provide a new perspective on some popular films, I am on a quest to change that. I'm not on this quest alone, however. This week, I am joined by actor, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, personal trainer, and board member of the Kingsman Shakespeare Company, and my friend Logan Chase. Logan, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's been a week since we've last spoken, and it's been a week for the listeners since they have last seen us, so welcome, listeners, as well. This week, we are continuing our discussion on Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and it's a doozy, let's say that in the least. So, I think before we get into it and continue and pick up where we left off, Logan, I have a question for you. And
Hmm.
as you are an actor, other than Jack, because that is too easy of an answer, who would you like to play in this film?
Oh, well, I mean, well then, like imaginary, I would want to play. I mean, I would want to play the wife because
Fair?
that's its own very stressful challenge because you're trying to be nurturing, but then things start going sideways, and then things really go, bad. If I can say that,
You're allowed to swear. We just
we're allowed to swear.
bleep it. You are allowed to
Okay,
swear. We just bleep it
right,
so that we don't get demonetized by YouTube.
right.
Yay!
So, but for me, I would say I probably would like to do Doc's character.
Okay.
Really? Oh no,
Nice.
sorry, not Doc. Oh,
Wendy?
the cook. No, the cook.
Oh, the cook.
Oh,
Oh, hold on. We have names. We have there are names.
why am I forgetting?
Dick
Right, Halloran.
Halloran. There we go. I was like, I don't know. Like, it's quicker to write Dick in my notes than it is to write Halloran, so I just wrote his first name down. That's very fair. So far in the film, I think I'd want to play Danny. I know that I never can, cause like
Hmm.
I'm not a 6-year-old child anymore. But something about Danny's character is just very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. Oh, I had another fun little Easter egg. That's not a spoiler, but it's in the Stephen King world. Right. So it's not a spoiler. I'll just say it briefly. There's if you ever do watch the sequel, Doctor Sleep,
That's the
the
sequel
act
to this?
yes, it's in the same universe.
Oh,
Technically, all of his film, most of his books are all in the same universe, but it's the sequel to this. Yeah. So this isn't a spoiler alert. It's not a spoiler alert at all.
I just didn't know that. That's just facts. Like,
Yeah, that's just facts. And I'll tell you, you'll see it in the first 10 frames of the trailer. Let alone if you were to pick up the book and read like, behind the book where there's what's it about in a synopsis.
for
It's
Doctor
about
Sleep.
Danny. Yeah, it's Danny so many years later.
Okay. Ooh.
And in terms of the movie, fun casting thing for you and your audience is that the actor who plays child Danny in The Shining gets a little gets a little cameo. It's easy to miss in Doctor Sleep.
Okay, well, I am very intrigued. Very, very intrigued, which now just means that I think I do need to do Doctor Sleep, knowing that it's a sequel, and I will have to have you back on because you were the one that told me about it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can
We'll
do that.
see.
No, your audience will like that, especially because it's in this format. Um,
Ooh.
and it's kind of the strange thing with almost all horror movies is that the closer you get into the 21st century, they just get a little darker. It's a little bit less of mind play, a little bit.
Yeah.
So
It's more
you're
like psychological, we're gonna mess with your mind rather than jump scare. Ah!
right. So, and I know you've told me about some of your audience, and they prefer that the very gruesome, although it may be good stuff, is nice. They'd rather hear it explained. So, and then for those
Yeah,
who are curious, I'm pretty sure it's an audiobook too.
that
So,
is fair. I have to still read The Shining. That is, as we're recording this episode, I haven't done that yet, but I do
mhm.
need to read it because this whole month of May, as these episodes are coming out, uh, we're also over on Flip the Scripts doing a comparison, as I was mentioning to you off camera, that we
Right,
were doing the comparison between The Shining book by Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick's film.
right.
So I still need to do that, but before we can do that, we need to actually talk about this film because I needed to watch it first.
All right.
Otherwise,
Take
it kind of
take it
ruins
away.
this show. So where we're starting, well, where we just left off, we have just left off at the very end of closing day, like the chapter closing day, and Danny and Dick are having a conversation. Dick explains to us about the shine and how some people have it, some people don't. Danny has it. And also, it's the same thing with places. Some places have it, some places don't, and the hotel has it. Danny had asked about room 237. Dick says, don't go in there no matter what. And that pretty much tells me that we're going into room 237 at some point. I don't know when, but we're going in there. So, where we're picking up this week, we're starting off with a month later. Now, a month later, Wendy is pushing food on a cart, and we enter one of the large rooms. And I was like, oh, hey, Danny's riding his tricycle down the halls. And I wanted to note something here. I really like the sound design here, where they actually had the sound change every single time his tricycle went on a different type of surface.
Yeah, the purposeful capturing of that. That was
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you if you listen to when you have your headphones on, let alone if you can catch another big screen showing of it, it's a strange, just natural. I don't know. It makes you feel like you're there for one,
Yeah.
and then there's something unnerving about it at the same time, because we also all know that as kids, our parents would say, "Yeah, you can write on the carpet, but don't write it on the wood
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna chip the wood." There's like that little bit of a parent in you that's like, "Don't do that. You're gonna leave a
Right.
mark."
I remember when we were changing from carpet to wood, I was really excited because it meant that I can play bouncy ball around the whole house.
Oh,
Then, this was what I was looking forward to. So, Jack is asleep in bed. Wendy brings in some breakfast. It's about 11:30 in the morning. Seems pretty fair. And she made it how he likes them. They're sunny side up. Personally, I like mine scrambled. I don't know about you, but everyone do their own. Enjoy your eggs
over
if you eat
easy.
the eggs. Over easy. Also a lovely way to have some eggs. There are multiple ways
Little,
to have them.
little runny.
Yeah, fair, fair, fair. Hard boiled is also quite nice, I think.
Yeah. You know what I mean when I say runny? When I
Oh,
say
yeah,
runny with the egg?
yeah. I
Okay.
think so.
Just making
I
sure.
think we're
See. So
like
there you are, scrambled egg boy. I see you.
I'm
You
so.
don't know.
Are you confusing? It's like how they used to do it when we were in England.
Yeah, it just means they're letting the yellow yolk
They
not
run a little bit.
harden,
Okay, I didn't know
so
if
it
it
can
was a
bleed a bit.
euphemism for something that like I just didn't know. Like, okay, cool. You're simply just talking about eggs.
I mean, it could be a euphemism, but that's for a different podcast. So you can
That's
continue
for
with
the
your
After Hours
synopsis.
podcast.
Oh
So,
yeah, geez.
anyway, where we're at. Wendy says, hey, it's pretty outside. How about a walk after breakfast? Jack says that he needs to do some writing. He has lots of ideas, but no good ones. And I'm like, you know what? I slightly understand you, but also at a point, like you just have to write down even all the bad ideas, and that's how you'll get to the good ideas. Sometimes you got to write down the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. Wendy says something will come, and just, settling back into the habit of writing every day is going to be very helpful. It's beautiful up here, and Jack does really enjoy it up here. He really enjoys the nature. And Wendy says that when they first came, she thought it was kind of scary. And I was like, ooh, the shine. Does she see it too? No. So Jack said that, hey, I loved it right away. He came up for the interview, and it was almost as if he had been here before. And I was like, okay, everyone has deja vu moments, but the way that it was delivered, like, it kind of seems this ridiculousness of like, he knew what was going to be happening around every corner kind of deal. Like, it was the way of delivering that line for me that made me think, like, again, that same concept that I've been thinking this whole time. Does he know a little bit of what he's going to do? And then this is where I had the question, does Jack have the shine but not realize that he has that power? Is it something that like Jack has that then gets passed down to Danny? And it's like, because Dick mentions it, some people have it, but they don't realize it, or they suppress it because they don't want to accept that they have it. So I'm thinking maybe Jack has the shine but has suppressed it. And now, like, being in this hotel, being in an environment that has the shine might unlock it for him.
Hmm. That's a cool theory. I've never heard that theory.
Okay. I, I don't know. But, like,
Yeah.
it's just something that, because I feel like, again, I know where he gets to, kind of, because pop culture. But, like, I'm still confused on how he gets there. So, I don't know. We'll find out. So, we start hearing the beating of a drum, and we see Jack's typewriter, and I thought it was a drum. Turns out it's just Jack throwing a tennis ball against the wall, which, fair enough. We used to do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever played this growing up, but we played a game called Wall Ball, which sounds exactly like what it is. Yeah,
You hit with the
you
palm of
have a
your
ball,
hand.
you throw it against the wall.
Right. Yeah. What did you do that with people, or was it just a solo thing?
Sometimes it was solo, and then sometimes it was like with other
All
people.
right. I think I think, I forgot what the name of it really was. It may have just been wall ball, but what we would have is we would have those rubber balls that had tethering on them that hurt like heck when you got hit with them in dodgeball. You remember
Oh,
this?
yeah, those. Yeah, yeah,
Cause
yeah.
yeah, cause so there was so these existed for like 2 decades, where the balls people used for dodgeball or handball were rubber, and inflated with
Yeah.
air before schools realized, oh, why don't we just use these styrofoam things that are like covered in a layer of
Yeah,
like
but
fake
now they
plastic
banned
leather.
that too, because apparently, like, getting hit in the head by accident with the dodgeball is too traumatic.
I mean, yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I'll take that ball over the sting, because when those rubber balls, and some people who are watching this will know this, when you get hit with those, and I don't know if did you ever get hit by one of those in the head
Oh, yeah.
or on your body? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. Definitely on the body. I don't
right.
know for sure if it hit me on the head, but like at least in elementary school, I still remember the rubber balls. But I think
So,
by the time I had
uh-huh.
gotten to middle and high school in the
Hmm.
early 2010s, I think most schools, or at least my school,
Okay.
had kind of shifted to those styrofoam balls. But like when
Okay.
I was still in elementary school, early middle school, the rubber balls were still a thing.
Okay. The my only my main little thing about that was so that I can relate with you that because it's hollow, it would actually make a ringing sound. So when you got hit by it, it's like it's not this obviously, but it's that pitch. When you would get hit by that ball in the head and your ear would just hear that ringing from the inside of the ball, let alone like the skid marks it could leave on your face.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember getting hit by one of them, and it left like, and it was on my arm that I had gotten hit, and it left marks on my arm for like the rest of the school day. Like I was fine. Like it was nothing. Like I was like, ow. And then like, it left marks for the rest of the school day. It was gone by the next day. But it was like a note to me of like, hey, get better at dodging because you're small and you don't have a lot of power to throw people out, so don't get hit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it taught me to be shifty.
All right. So that was that was a childhood segue from the scene of Jack throwing the ball around.
Throwing a tennis ball at a wall. So
Mm.
outside, Wendy and Danny are running around, and Wendy says the loser has to keep America clean. And I was like, well, that sucks, on like dropping that whole responsibility on one singular human being. Like, that's a big responsibility.
Yeah. I forgot that line. That's a good. That's a good,
Yeah,
good catch.
yeah. Like, and also, Wendy, you're going to beat the 5-year-old. You're putting this responsibility on a 5-year-old. You are a monster. I don't even know if Jack is the true villain of this film anymore. Anyway, they head out, they into the hedge, and they go into the maze and they start walking around. And we see a map of the maze as well. And I wasn't sure if the map was supposed to tell us anything. Is there anything like specific that like you can tell me without spoiling anything? Like was the map supposed to like give us anything, or was it just a cool shot?
So it's definitely a cool shot. Like many things in this film, it's it might foreshadow something that you're already thinking about, and it might foreshadow something you're not going to see coming. It is something I missed in my first two times watching it. What it
Okay.
was like, what its device was for why bother getting that, including that in the shot.
Okay. That was a perfectly ambiguous way of answering my question and not answering my question, and so thank you. So they keep walking around, they keep hitting some dead ends. The music is once again very eerie, and I don't like it, which is again leading to this idea of like, I feel like they're gonna end up in the maze and it's not gonna be all hunky dory. We're exploring as mother and child. So we transition to watching Jack walk around the hotel, and he gets to a diagram of this maze and he sees the whole diagram, and then it kind of zooms in on the center of the maze very slowly. We can hear Wendy and Jack talking in the background. Sorry, Wendy and Danny talking in the background. And it zooms in to see that Wendy and Danny are in the middle of the maze, and the music picks up and is still like just very dissonant and very eerie, and then suddenly cuts off, and we get Tuesday. Very sudden. Didn't expect that scene to end there. We'll see what happens. It is now just a Tuesday. We're not sure what day it was on a month later. I'm trying to keep track of like the timeline now that we have like a date. If I'm not mistaken, it's now like early December, correct? Because the hotel closes in October,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, late October. Yeah,
Yeah. It closes late October. And then if we say, I think I have the exact date in my notes. Hold on.
but it makes sense that it's in December. Yeah.
Yeah, it closes October 30th. So a month later, would be November 30th, and then Tuesday. So I'm kind of thinking we're first week of December kind of time frame is my best guess on where we're at timeline wise. So Wendy is opening up a can of shrimp cocktail, and on the news we hear Rutherford was serving a life sentence for his conviction of a 1968 shooting. And I was like, what happened? Did he escape? Did he die? We don't get an answer. I want to know more about Rutherford. What did Rutherford do? Is he also part of this Stephen King universe that apparently is like a whole universe now and not just like random books that he's written? I don't know. I need answers. What has Rutherford done in the 1968 shooting? And what has happened to him now in 1980? I don't know when this book is set. So, I don't know. I know when the film is. We also hear a search continues for a missing Aspen woman, 24 years old, Susan Robertson, missing for 10 days, disappeared while on a hunting trip with the husband. The husband did it? Not necessarily. Hopefully she's okay. They have good weather now, but they will call off the search because it is supposed to snow tomorrow. And the weather is lovely today. It's hard to imagine a snowstorm is so close. And I was just like, that is how the weather works. Welcome to meteorology. It changes by the hour, let alone by the day. And to the north and the west, it is snowing and cold, and it is moving towards Colorado. Danny is back riding through the halls on his tricycle again. The eerie music returns again, and he rides past room 237 and stops outside the door. And he seems tempted to go in, and so he gets off of his tricycle. He slowly walks towards the door, reaches out for the handle, turns it, tries to open the door, but it is locked. And we do see a quick flash of the creepy twins. Are they twins in the original book? Like, this isn't really much of a spoiler, I would say, if it's not, because earlier in the film, we get told that they were 8 or 10, 8 and 10, but here we see them as twins. So was it always twins, or did they just pick twins to make it like creepier in the film?
I honestly haven't done the source material. Any other person that does content on this film points out the same exact contradiction that you did.
Okay.
And they theorize, I want to say there was an interview with the person who was like the script supervisor on set that mentioned it. And he says it was accident, but when Kubrick found out about it, he didn't, he actually, he embraced it because he took it as he took it as a bit of ambiguity that just adds to the flavor of the film. That's from that interview. But that, you're right, that contradiction is there. I'd have to look at the source material to figure it out.
Sure. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you go listen to Flip the Scripts, possibly the episode that's coming out 2 days from now, if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, I might have an answer. So he goes in, he doesn't go anywhere. He doesn't go in. He sees the creepy twins. He gets back on his tricycle. He rides away. Jack, meanwhile, is working on his typewriter, and the music slowly crescendos and becomes more distorted, and Wendy arrives and asks how it's going. And Jack pulls the paper out of the typewriter, and the music suddenly stops. And Wendy asks if he got a lot done today, and he was like, yes. And she's like, it said on the weather forecast that it will snow tonight. And Jack's just like, well, what do you want me to do about it? Wendy's like, well, you don't need to be so grouchy. And Jack's just like, well, I'm not being a grouch. I just want to finish my work. And Wendy says that she understands. She'll come back in a bit with some sandwiches, and maybe he'll let her read something then. And this is the scene that we were slightly alluding to last episode, where Jack then explains that when she comes in and she is distracting him, It will take time to get back to where he was, and he rips up what he just wrote. And I was like, why would you rip up what you just wrote? I understand needing to get back into like the flow, but like maybe if you read what you just wrote, it would help you get back into the flow. Like you don't need to rip it up. Maybe just like start it anew and like retype it, but don't completely rip it up. Just a thought. But Jack makes a new rule. He says, when I'm in here and typing or not typing, whatever you may think I am doing, it means I'm working. And when I'm in here, it means don't come in. And I kind of feel for Jack a little bit because Wendy's coming in to literally just tell him it's gonna snow tomorrow. And it's not like Jack can do anything with this information. It's not like he can stop it from snowing tomorrow. And it's just like trivial reasons kind of why she's coming in, and I understand where he's coming from of like it's not like I'm just sitting in here, you know, reading a book. It's not like I'm sitting in here just twiddling my thumbs watching TV. Like I am working, believe it or not. So, I kind of get where he's coming from of like, hey, just respect that. Like I'm trying to work and distractions aren't helping. So, he might have been able to say it in a nicer way, but again, fair. Wendy's like, okay. And Jack just goes, why don't you start right now and get the out of here? Beautifully delivered. Beautifully
Yeah.
delivered by Jack Nicholson. But yeah, and then literally right under that, I was just like, I understand where he's coming from, but she did also come in for a very stupid reason. It wasn't like she was coming in with the sandwich then and then being like, hey, you need to eat. Also, it's going to snow tomorrow. Like, if she combined the two, he might not have been as mean about it.
Right. Yeah, if there was a purpose. There is that little, I'm sure it's purposefully written that way, but it's inferred, like this moment happens to everybody where you are in the middle of something and someone comes in and it seems like it's just a chit chat, and we all have different ways of saying I'm not in the mood for chit chat.
Yeah.
And he's all the way on that other side of the pendulum. uh when she asks, and it's the tough thing again to remember, he's still, we talked about it in the previous episode, he's still having a very hard time sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So the level of agitation when you haven't had enough sleep, like one time I made the mistake, well, it wasn't a mistake, it's just part of life. I took a job as a security guard and I did 3 nights in a row of graveyard, which for some people that's their labor, like some police officers, some security guards. But I wasn't ready because I didn't have anyone really to talk to about it. After day 2, I was irritable. I was getting pretty close to snapping. So at least for me, when I see that in Jack, not justifying it because he gets pretty fucking brutal, I get snappy.
Yeah,
So
and like I definitely do as well if it's like trivial things and it keeps happening over and over again, or sometimes it's like, I've had a really bad day or like just a really bad, like, 2, 3 days. And then someone says something, it's not directed towards them, but I become snappy. And then, like, I go back and I apologize and I'm like, sorry, I didn't mean to snap at you. But, like, yeah,
mhm.
it happens. I think everyone has different tipping points of where that snappiness comes in. But I think everybody does have a little bit of it in them. It's just more apparent in some people than it is in others. But yeah, it didn't seem like she needed to come in at that point. But I feel like this is an important scene because you start seeing the shift in Jack. Like you saw it a little bit in A Month Later, but this is on Tuesday, is this scene where like you really start seeing the shift a little bit. of like, okay, he's starting to become snappy. He's starting to become agitated. Like, what's going on here? Like, is this gonna just alleviate itself? Is it gonna fester? Is it gonna turn into something more? I think it's gonna fester and turn into something more. And, like, that's just an educated guess. So we'll find out. But before we can find out, we gotta take a quick intermission. So we'll go chat about stuff, and then we'll be back with the rest of this episode and figure out if Jack's just gonna get more agitated or if he's gonna be hunky-dory, let it all go play with his kid. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale. I hope you are all enjoying this episode, and if you want to gain access to more bonus content, like access to my notes and access to some of the tier lists that I make and help suggest films and things like that, all of that can be done over at our Patreon, and that can be found at patreon.com/coopforge. So that's patreon.com/CO_OPFORGE. Signing up for any of the tiers gets you different types of bonus content depending on the tier that you sign up for, and a shout out here on the show for every patron that signs up. It really means the world to us, and it helps us grow this show and helps us be able to put the money back into this show to make it a better experience for you, the listeners. That is our entire goal here at Co-op Forge. So thank you all so much if you are considering doing this. Now, if you want to help the show in a non-monetary way, that is fantastic as well. You can do so by just talking about us and sharing it with a friend. Just reach out to a friend and be like, hey, you love movies, or hey, you need an excuse to watch more movies. Check out this show called Post Finale. The host is silly, he's an actor, he's confused most of the time, gets a lot of guesses wrong, but overall it's a lovely time and some interesting discussions about some iconic films. I think you'll really enjoy it. It really does help. And be sure to talk about us on social media and follow us on social media. That really helps out a lot as well. If you're looking for the show, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Post Finale Pod. And then you can also find us at Co-op Forge on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And that's at Co-op Forge at CO_OPFORGE. And we post content not just from Post Finale, but from the other shows here on Co-op Forge as well. So that includes Flip the Scripts, and that includes Seattle Across the Pond. So be sure follow both of those channels. Again, it's at Post Finale Pod and at Co-op Forge, CO_OPFORGE. But just thank you so much for listening to this episode. Wherever you are, if you're enjoying the episode, if you're listening on YouTube, please please hit subscribe. It really does help us out. If you're listening on a podcast app, that's great as well. It doesn't matter to us where you're listening. We're just so thankful that you're listening. But if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating. It really does help us out. Please leave a review and hit that follow button. You can also turn on notifications both on YouTube and on the podcast apps just to be notified when new episodes come out. It really does mean a lot that you are all listening to these episodes, and thank you all so much. So let's get back to the episode without further ado. So we are back, and it is now Thursday. Oh, look, it snowed. And it snowed on the Wednesday. Oh my goodness, they kept it in and understand how time works. Yay! It's the small things. I've been watching a lot of movies recently where I'm like, do they have a lack of concept of timing? So, Hunger Games series. Learn how time works. So, they kept it in. Wendy and Jack, not Jack, Wendy and Danny. I keep writing Jack. I want to call the little boy Jack. His name is Danny. Jack is the dad. Wendy and Danny are outside playing and running in the snow. We see the eerie sound. We don't see the sound. We hear the sound. Words are hard, ladies and gentlemen. We hear the sound coming back. And then we snap to Jack looking menacing, staring at something. And for anyone listening, I will try to do the face. It's something along the lines of this, or anyone that's watching, anyone that's listening to just the audio. I'm sorry 5 seconds of audio that isn't going to be there because it's going to be me trying to do a face. But it's something along the lines of this. I think, kind of. I don't know if I did that right. I might be wrong.
It's a great moment in the film. No, it's so you got to imagine that he's in front of the window and there are symbols at the top of the window and he's
Oh,
fixated
right.
on
He's
it.
looking up. He's not looking down.
No, so it's more entranced. I think I can do it cuz when I was watching the film I was trying to get into that place and
Oh, I
it's
was too.
scary because you're trying to figure out what is he feeling and it's just
Oh, that one's good. That one's better than what I did. Mine was just like awkward.
right.
It was mad, but awkward. It wasn't the right thing. Logan's was better.
It's
But
yeah, it's well what's interesting when you're watching it, I think he's also you also can see drool a little bit
yeah.
when
Hey,
he's
Pranav,
there.
do us a favor and we had our renditions of it. Can you just toss up what the actual one is? Yeah, it's that, ladies and gentlemen. Great, thanks, man. So we see that happen, and that's the end of Thursday. That's all that happens on Thursday.
Yeah, it's unnerving that it's
I
like
don't like
over.
that. I don't like that. No, no, no. Don't like it. Do not like it. So we then get to Saturday because apparently nothing interesting happened on Thursday. There's still a lot of snow. It's very hard to see far, and you see this with the shot of the hotel. Like, you can't really see the hotel very well, and you can tell that the hotel is supposed to be like, you know, maybe 500 meters away. Like, not far. Like, it is fairly close, but it's still, very difficult to see. Visibility, not the best. Jack is working away on his typewriter, and Wendy seems like she is trying to get some type of signal on. At first, I thought it was radios, realized it's phone lines, but she's not getting anything to work. She walks past the double doors where we saw blood flowing down the hall earlier in the flashback. Thanks to what's the friend's Tony. Thanks to Littlefinger Tony over there. Um, the voice who lives inside of Danny's mouth and then hides in his stomach and talks to him through his finger. Go figure. And she walks into a room and gets on a radio and says KDK12, calling KDK1. And hey, look, it's KDK1. Very good. We find out that KDK1 is for contacting the U.S. Forest Service, and the officer confirms to her that most of the telephone lines are down due to the storm. And, you know, I was just like, well, that's going to be convenient. Let me take a guess. The lines are going to be down already, and then Jack is going to disable the radio connection so that later in the film, when Wendy tries to call somebody for help, she's not going to be able to. I appreciate you sitting there and nodding and not being able to say anything.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because it's for especially for your audience because at this point, just like that one Thursday scene, it's all visual. So
Yeah.
all the Easter eggs or what you're trying to pick up are all visual, and we're here in this different medium where we're trying to do it in a radio way.
I didn't think about that. Very interesting. Yeah. So Wendy asks when the phone lines might be repaired, and the officer informs to her that usually they'll be down until spring, and this is one of the worst storms that they have had in years. Well, isn't that convenient? So the officer also tells Wendy, hey, it's probably best just leave your radio on all the time now, so, they can contact them, and, it's the only line of contact up to the hotel. It's good to just leave it on. Wendy's like, sure, fair enough. Thanks, the kind officer, and then says, over and out. And for anyone wondering, why, we always say over whenever you see anything and people are using radios, it's just a way to let the other person know that your sentence, what you are saying is done, and they're good to
Mm-hmm.
respond. That's literally all it is. Danny is back on his little trike, and the eerie music is back once again. It keeps coming back. It's just always around because tension. So he goes around the corner, sees the creepy twins, and this time they talk to him, and it's weird. They just go, "Hello, Danny. Come and play with us. Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and never and never." I've heard that part.
Right.
Didn't realize I had heard that part until I heard it, and I was like, "Oh, that's a memory from something."
Right. Right.
Danny then gets flashes of the girls, and they are cut up and killed by the hatchet. You see a hatchet laying on the ground as well. There's pools of blood everywhere. The girls are all chopped up and, kind of butchered. And I was like, oh, I was right. These are the girls that were murdered in 1970. And this is again where I was like, they weren't
Right.
twins according to Omen. And we had that
Right.
discussion before the intermission. And I was like, okay, but also, if this happened in 1970, how has this not gotten more news coverage if it happened within the last 10 years?
Within the story, I don't know if Stephen King's novel really gives that impression, but this is one of those things where it's still the world of local news stations that are
Right.
propagated across the United States, in every state, in every city, and they're not all bought up into a conglomerate thing. Like where I live, KTLA, and
Yeah.
there's one other news station. They for a long time they were independent and they were on their own, kind of like what Anchorman shows that world before
I'm going to take your word for
people
it because
start
I haven't
buying
seen
up.
Anchorman
Yeah.
either.
So what I'm getting at is that even back then, murder rates were what they were. People were dying in X, Y, and Z places, but you would never see it except on end of year statistics. It's
Okay.
and because it is in such an isolated place, they didn't find them till some odd time later when the staff came back
Right.
to the hotel. And
They didn't
I'm
find them until
sure,
May, I think.
right. And even stories that are too gruesome wouldn't get aired. And that
Okay.
might have been one that's too gruesome to get aired. It may have been in the local newspaper for an article, but it's, it's not like today where they kind of vive for any opportunity because everyone's trying to get a click for that news.
Right. Well,
Right.
I understood that, but it was also
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about the gruesome part of it. Cause I was surprised that nobody in town had even talked about it much and things like that. Like we had to wait until Ullman told Jack for Jack to find out about it.
And Jack makes that little sidebar sly point of, oh yeah, no, they didn't try to tell me about
Yeah.
that. And it's an awkward thing of like, huh, these weren't people trying to dupe him. These were people probably trying not to scare him away from taking the job that's good money because they know he needs it. Which
Right.
you can take it, you can take as a compliment or an insult. You think I'm so desperate that I would ignore this, or that you think I'm in such a bad mood about it. I'd rather hear it from the horse's mouth on whether I take the job or not. It's yeah. And then just on a side note, you mentioned earlier about the bodies, the girls standing there. It took me, if I didn't have the ability to pause my video because I'm watching it through streaming, it would have been easy for me to miss some of the details on them because like the frame, as you know, the frame shows us the body, Danny, bodies, Danny, bodies,
Yeah.
Danny. in that
Like the
sequence.
frame is maybe there for like a second.
Right. But then he decides to reintroduce it to us again on the back-to-back interaction. And it's jarring, but each time it goes back to the girls, it gets a little closer, and it's really sitting with you, like what happened. So it's
Hmm.
an unnerving scene that you just described.
Yeah, it's definitely something. And Danny's covering his eyes in fear, and the girls are gone. When he opens them again, Danny tells Tony that he is scared, and Tony responds, "Remember what Mr. Halloran said. It's just like the pictures in a book, Danny. It isn't real." I appreciate you doing the finger while I did the voice. Worked out great.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because he's for the people that don't know, he's sitting in his bike, and then the hand comes up, then he looks towards it, and he just starts listening to it.
Yeah. It's really unnerving. I still am not sure how Tony fits into all of this. I feel like he has to play a really big role, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. So we'll find out. But that's the end of Saturday. Saturday is over. Saturday is
Mm-hmm.
complete. I guess something happened on Sunday. We don't find out because the next thing we hear about is Monday. Now, Monday, we're watching TV, and hey, it's still snowing outside. Well, they did say that it was one of the worst storms in years. Makes sense. Sometimes snowstorms can last very long amount of times, especially up in the mountains. So, you know, cool. So, it's only Danny and Wendy watching TV. Jack is not. Jack hasn't spent any time with his family from what we have seen in this entire film. Outside of like, them driving up.
Mm-hmm.
But like ever since they have been left alone here, we haven't seen Jack spend any time with them. Which makes me think that the isolation's getting to him much more than it might be getting to the other two. Because the other two are still social. Are still
Mm-hmm.
talking to each other, they're still playing, but Jack isn't.
Right.
Which kind of, again, it makes me think, okay, one of two things. I still feel like some of it might be premeditative, like I've been saying this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of wants to step away from the family. Like he wants to break off because he
Mm.
knows that he's going to do this horrible thing. Or it's kind of like the other thing where the shine is starting to like reveal itself in himself. And then because of that, it's causing him to want to separate because he's seeing potentially horrible things. He's hearing these voices.
Mm.
And Tony, a little bit to Danny, seems like he's warning Danny. Seems like he's trying to
Mm-hmm.
protect Danny in a way of like, don't worry, remember, it's not real. Like, they're not actually there. Like, it's going to
Right.
be okay. It kind of seems like Tony's protecting. Maybe the voice inside Jack's head isn't protecting, but antagonizing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like we don't know. We don't know if he has a voice in his head, but I'm thinking that
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those two things. I'm a little more confident on the Jack having the shine theory right now than I am of the premeditative theory. Because if it was the premeditative theory, why would he wait this long?
Right.
And why would we have the scene that we have right now? So we have Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently the donuts are marvelous in the snow. I have no idea what that is in reference to, but that's in my notes.
The donuts are wonderful in the snow?
Yeah.
Is that from the movie?
Something sparked me to write this down.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like an offhand song lyric, but yeah, that's weird. I
I
I
don't
don't
know.
I don't know what to comment on that.
Hey, listeners, if any of you are listening and understand maybe why I wrote down the donuts are marvelous in the snow, could you help me figure out what was happening in my brain as I was watching this? Because, like, that would be helpful. So,
Phew.
anyway, back to, like, things that make sense. Danny asks if he can go to his room to get his fire engine, and Wendy says, "Not now, Dad's asleep." And Danny promises that he won't make any noise, he'll tiptoe, and Wendy's like, "Okay, but really don't make a sound." Understandable. I mean, as kids, we've all been told this of like, okay, like, hey, you can go in a bit, like dad's asleep, mom's asleep, like someone's taking a nap, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, no, I really want it
Right.
now, and it's like, okay, fine, like you can go, but like don't make a sound, like
It's your risk.
it's like I have warned you. If you get yelled
Mm-hmm.
at, that's on you. So Danny heads off, and well, before Danny heads off, Wendy's like, "Hey, come back soon. I'm gonna make lunch." And he's like, "Okay," and he's going to make. And I was just like, "Great, he's gonna make a sound, and Jack's gonna be upset with him. It's probably what's gonna happen." Danny has on a very cute sweater, by the way. It's Mickey Mouse kicking an American football. It's just a cute sweater. I just, it was just adorable. I like the costume choice. I was like, "Aw, cute." And Jack, I was wrong instantly, is not asleep, but rather he's just sitting on the edge of his bed. And Danny asks Jack if he can go and get his fire engine. And Jack tells him to come here first.
Mm-hmm.
Jack picks up Danny and gives him a hug and asks him how it's going. "Okay." "Good time?" "Yes, Dad." "Good. I want you to have a good time." "I am." And then Danny asks if his dad feels bad. And his dad, Jack, is just like, "I'm a little bit tired." "Why don't you go to sleep?" "I can't. Too much to do." "Do you like this hotel?" And then Jack just kind of chuckles and he's like, "I do. I love it. Don't you?" "I guess so." And then this is the creepy part where he's just like, "Good. I want you to like it here. I wish we could stay here forever and ever." And he says the same thing that the twins told Danny in the hallway, which is again slightly like it's making me feel more confident about this theory that Jack might have the shine. Because how did he know the exact same line?
Right.
Like, how does he know the thing that's gonna trigger it for Danny?
Mm-hmm.
Because then Danny turns around and asks, You would never hurt mommy and me, would you?" Jack does snap out of it a little bit. He says, "What do you mean? Did your mother ever say that to you? That I would hurt you?" And he's like, "No, Dad." "You sure?" "Yes." "I love you, Danny, more than anything else in the world. I would never do anything to hurt you, ever. You know that, right?" "Yes, Dad." It's a very weird scene, and how we can unpack it now that we've gotten through it. But, like, yeah, I don't know how to feel about this scene. I don't like it.
I love
I
it.
really.
I think
Okay,
it's a huge. It's a really fun moment. You do your thoughts first. You're the host.
sure, sure. I mean, the reason I don't like it is because of the uneasiness that I get, right? And it's that uneasiness of he's not gonna hurt Danny. He's gonna hurt Mom. He's gonna hurt Wendy. Danny's gonna be fine because whatever's going on inside of Jack, which I still think is the shine that's like coming out in him, and it's an antagonizing voice. At some point, like maybe after he hurts Wendy, he's going to go try to hurt Danny, but then before he hurts Danny, his main voice, like as Jack, not whatever the Shine voice is, but Jack, his voice comes back and goes, "That's your son, don't hurt him." And he stops.
Right. It's that's the nice thing. The great thing about this scene that it does is it subverts that part of our expectation on where it's going already,
Yeah.
because we're seeing, because for the longest time we just see Jack with Wendy,
Mm-hmm.
and we see that interaction and we say, oh yeah, boy, that's toxic. And then we see some of the supernatural things. Someone might be thinking your theory that's coming up, and then you're concerned about Danny, but then all of a sudden you see him isolated with Danny, and yeah, he's just a parent that's tired.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's just
maybe there's
exhausted.
right. Yeah, there's that word choice that is ominous, but is it necessarily, how do I it is it necessarily something channeling through him? I don't know. But when he gets that moment when Danny's really checking in on his dad,
Yeah.
which
And
is a
like,
very interesting thing. And you see the strong unconditional love where it's like, "Oh yeah, no, Danny, like Danny can do not just no wrong, but in a way he's trying to like prove the point that he loves him almost more than mom does. It feels like a competition." And it's this weird moment that for me, I feel like, oh wait, no, Danny's safe, I
yeah.
think,
I also
in
think
all of
that. I think
this.
Danny's gonna be safe. Danny's not gonna be really a part of much. Like, I think Danny might unlock some of the mysteries of the hotel, of the
Mm-hmm.
Overlook.
Right.
But in terms of what I know happens to Jack, in terms of, like, him trying to chop down a door with an axe, then
Mm-hmm.
that's mainly the only thing that I know that happens. But
Right. Right. And
this is the main thing
he
that I know that happens.
I was going to just say real quick before we move on. And at no
Yeah.
point so far in the film has he complained about Danny.
No,
Even though we
he's
don't see
never said.
interactions with him and Danny, he doesn't whenever he chooses things to complain about,
It's
especially when he's
Wendy.
talking to Wendy, yeah, it's always just her.
It's always
So,
just her. And even in this scene, it's, "I love you. Do you like this place? How are you finding it? Are you
mm-hmm.
okay?" And also, like, credit to a 5-year-old checking in on his dad. "Are you doing okay, dad? Like, it seems like you're really tired. Like, maybe you should try
Yeah.
to get some sleep."
Yeah.
Like, credit
That's
to the
such a great
5-year-old.
kid question, because the kids do ask that about their parents. Like they'll come up and they'll start to console them
Yeah.
when they're so
And, like,
little.
they don't necessarily understand, but, like, they can be 4 and they have the basic understanding of, like,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm tired, I'm cranky. Mom seems cranky. Maybe mom's tired.
Right.
Like, they have that much problem solving skills. Kids are intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
like, especially emotionally, kids are more intelligent than sometimes people give them credit for. But,
Mm-hmm.
I think with it being all about, like, there's no snappiness, there's no judgment. It's just like, there's the ominous word choice, as we mentioned, but it's not like there's any hostility, because all of it is, are you having a good time? I want you to have a good time. Like, are you doing okay? Like, how are you enjoying it? Like, do you like this place? And it isn't until Danny mentions um that, "Hey, you would never hurt mommy and me," that you see the snap happen in Jack, where then he's like, "What do you mean? Like, did your mother say that to you?" Like, it's instantly blaming her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what's making me think that Danny's gonna be safe in all of this.
Yeah.
But I have no
All
idea.
right.
We're gonna find out, but we're gonna have to find out next week, because this is where we're ending this episode. Because I haven't watched any more of the film. Haha. Logan, thank you so much for joining once again. And if people want to find you on the internet doing stuff, all of the different things that you do, where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
I have my main website where I have some portfolio stuff, loganchase.org, or you can just follow me on Instagram, Logan WH Chase, with the @ sign in the
Wonderful.
beginning.
Yes. So, listeners, we will link it down in the description of this episode as well. But, Logan, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thanks so much for listening. And until next time, catch y'all later. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale. Post Finale is created, hosted, and produced by me, Ankit Madhira. Our editor is Pranav Nair. The music is by Ankit Madhira and Megan Hutchison, and the art is by Jarid Rother. If you are all enjoying this episode and want to gain access to more bonus content, you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/coopforge and signing up for any of the tiers. You get loads of different bonus content, such as notes and commentary that we have as we're watching the films, as well as some bonus audio, some bonus videos, and ad-free episodes, early access if we get them done early, and different things like that. All of that can be found at patreon.com/coopforge, and that's patreon.com/co_opforge. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, that's great as well. Tell a friend about the show. Just reach out and be like, hey, you love films, or hey, you need an excuse to watch some more films. Check out the show called Post Finale. The host is an actor, and he's funny and silly, confused most of the time, but they have interesting discussions about some popular films that I think you would really enjoy. It really does help us out a lot. Be sure to talk about us on social media at Post Finale Pod on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also follow us at CoOpForge, that's CO_OPFORGE, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And there we post content not just from Post Finale, but also from the other shows hosted here on Co-op Forge, which are Flip the Scripts and Seattle Across the Pond. So a lot of fun things can be found over there on our social media. It really, really does help us out a lot. Thank you to everyone who has already done this. Thank you to everyone who will do this in the future. It really does mean a lot to us, and it helps us create better content for you, the listeners, as we grow. It really does help, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Post Finale, and I can't wait until next week. And until then, I'll catch y'all later.